my or speak a little bit about my travel guitar and just hang around here and hopefully have a good time. Um, I mean, this is more than just a travel guitar. I've actually used it in some of my most popular videos on Instagram. I think there's one groove thing I do with play like, but of course with a cooler sound and all that. I think it's got like in total it's like 4 or 5 million views. So I guess you can do good stuff with the travel guitar. But it's pretty cool because this guitar, I don't know, I have really have some, you know, personal affection to it. It started when I was, I think I was 19 years old, and I thought Alan Holsworth was pretty cool, especially the legato style technique. And my guitar teacher in here in Stockholm, Christian Niemann, he was really a fan of Holsworth, and I was a fan of Christian. So Holsworth had to be good then. And so there was, this was like 20 years ago. You know, I'm a boomer, and everything I'm speaking about happened a long time ago. But there weren't really a lot of easy ways you could find weird guitars if you lived in Stockholm, because most of the stores here have Gibsons and Fenders, and maybe you could find like a Parker guitar or something. But so I found like an ad in a guitar magazine. I think it was a Swedish guitar magazine. I'm not sure, but it said Music Yo. And they sold these Gibson-owned Steinbergers. So this is a Steinberger Spirit GT Pro, and they were pretty cheap. At least I thought they were amazingly cheap, because the alternative was to, back in the days, I thought the only alternative was to get one of those used graphite Alan Holsworth style guitars, which were easily, I think, the equivalent of $1,500 used. I mean, they're pretty popular guitars. So this was the only option I had if I wanted to get like an Alan Holsworth style guitar. So I bought it, and it was amazing. I can still, remember the day I got the delivery. So I was a student back then, and I lived in this, I don't know what's called in English, student flat, student corridor. So basically you just had a room and a toilet, and then you shared the kitchen. So I still remember how I was woken up somehow by the delivery dude, and I was sleeping or something. I went out, oh, my guitar. And, that was Swedish delivery dude. But I was so focused on this guitar coming from abroad. So I started speaking English to him. And he was like, yeah. And I heard he was Swedish, like, oh, du kanske pratar svenska, maybe you speak Swedish. I was confused. I got my guitar. I was so happy because setup was amazing. It was really good. In fact, I brought it to my teacher who played in Therion then, it's a pretty big German metal band. And when he saw the guitar, was like, yeah, I'm gonna get 2 of these as well. The setup, I hadn't touched it. Setup was amazing. Cool, we got Joji here. So Joji, I'm Stockholm, Sweden now, very close to where I live, in a little forest area, or close to forest area. Really nice weather, so I just wanted to share this moment with you guys, speak a little bit about my guitar. Awesome to see you here, man. But anyhow, so I got this guitar. It was perfectly set up, and the reason being, the question you might ask is, how can you buy like a cheap guitar? I think it was, you can still find them for like $400 new. I think that's what they cost back in the days as well, maybe a little less probably. So how can you get a really good setup, super low action for that price? And of course, it's always a bit of a lottery if you're speaking about cheaper guitars, but this is an easy build. I think it might be, I'm not 100% sure, but it might be one big chunk, or one big piece of wood, or maybe 3 pieces of wood. So you have one there, a long one here, and then you have 2 here. And that kind of, I guess, it makes it easy to set up. You don't have to worry too much about contour and stuff like that. I added this later on, so it's a bit more comfortable. I thought you were playing silent guitar. What's that, silent guitar? You can hear a little bit, hopefully. can hear a little bit. I don't have any way to amplify this now, so it's more of like a travel thing. But you can see I've done a lot of things with this guitar, right? So the thing is, I don't have that many items left from when I was 20 years old or 19 years old. This is pretty much it. I think I have maybe some outdoor fishing equipment, but it's not really, this is really takes me back to the days every time I see it, back to the days. So of course, when you're young and dumb, you don't really understand. Well, I mean, I wanted to explore different guitars, different gears. So I almost sold it. I almost threw this away because I just played it until it couldn't be played anymore. Frets were completely worn out. Somehow I managed to totally screw up the electronics. Nothing worked. So I just put this guitar away, and I got myself other guitars. And if it had had any value, I would most likely have sold it. Pavle, what's up, my man? Good to see you. But then, when I got wiser and older, and I actually got a bit more interest in tweaking guitars myself. I still do a lot. If I had more time on my hands, I would probably buy myself like a guitar kit, something like that, and start getting better at that stuff. But I can do some tweaks on my own, and one of them being scalloping. This was the first scallop I tried. And actually, I have to tell you, I'm surprised how well it went, because I used like a cheap version of a Dremel tool. I didn't have any patience. I just went all over the guitar, and that's why it's really deep, I probably wouldn't do it as deep these days, but the guitar still sounds awesome. It's a big piece of wood here, big chunky piece of wood, and the scallop is beautiful. Or beautiful is not the right word. It's super comfortable. But the thing is, as I said, this guitar came with a great setup. Still 20 years later, setup is really good. But the frets were worn out. So I had the choice between investing in, refretting the guitar. I wouldn't want to do that on my own. I guess I could have tried it on this guitar, but I most likely would have failed in some ways because refretting is much harder than scalloping. And I wasn't really into learning all about that. That would have been a huge project. Scalloping was big enough for me, to try. But it worked out, and all of a sudden I realized, hey, this guitar, yeah, it starts to feel really good. So I was like, okay, scalloping is probably a cool thing, and maybe I should fix the electronics, and maybe I shouldn't throw this guitar, and maybe I'm super happy I didn't get rid of this guitar because it's a piece of my personal history now. So what did I do? I still wasn't really ready to invest in this guitar, so I took some spare pickups I had. These really loud pickups, and for some reason, I've only had them in guitars where I really didn't like the sound of them. This is a Seymour Duncan GB. It's a super classic pickup. And this is a 59, and the GB and 59 is a really classic combination. And this is I think it's the equivalent of a hot rail. I think hot rails is DeMars, you're right. So this is their take on like a hot rail. It's a super hot single coil sized humbucker pickup. So I threw them in this guitar. I was like, I hate these pickups, but I need something for this guitar to work. Oh, sun, please come back. Sweden, it's too cold. When the sun disappears, you don't want to be outside anymore. I think we're good. It's only a small piece of cloud here. Yeah, I put these in, and I don't know why. I can't remember if I did it all at the same time. I think I did. But I was like, yeah, I want to try coil splitting as well. Or rather, I think I understood that since I didn't like these high output pickups, chances of me digging the sound were small. So I tried the coil split thing, and that's why we have one of these. And bingo. This guitar sounds awesome now, and largely thanks to this coil split, because these classic pickups, especially that GB, is a bit too loud usually, unless we're speaking metal guitar, for my taste. But with a coil split, it's an amazing single coil. And I can even run it in the in-between position and get rid of the hum. So coil splitting both of these, coil splitting this single coil size humbucker pickup as well. Very, very cool stuff. So all of a sudden I had a guitar that not only felt right, but it sounded right. And I had personal affection to it. So that's how this cheap little, what's the word, gem from a long time ago, all of a sudden is one of my favorite guitars. I use it on a daily basis. You might not see it in the videos I produce. It'll come, I'll do them as well. But I actually use this for tabbing. It's my #1 choice. And that's because it's so easy to bring with me. I can just take my laptop and tab wherever I want to. And it has a 24 frets good reach, or decent reach, so that even if I record a solo on one of my 24 frets guitars, I know that I'll be able to transcribe it on this guitar. But the cool thing is, it works really well for metal sounds if I disengage the push-pull and use it as a standard humbucker. And it's really nice for cleans as well. It has like a tele-twang to it. I couldn't be happier. So, of course, as you might have guessed by now, I'm not in any way sponsored by Spirit by Steinberger, but I'd love to try more of their guitars. And I don't know, Gibson has bought this company, so they're Gibson owned. But from what I can tell, they still have some new models. They still do. I mean, they're a somewhat active guitar brand, so I guess that was cool. Gibson bought them because they obviously weren't doing that good, I guess, when the 80s were over and people didn't want these guitars. So Standingcraft, I don't have the possibility to plug in here, but you can check out maybe my older videos that you're gonna see, but it's a really nice guitar. It works now for both cleans and metal. And I mean, let's face it, the reason people don't like this guitar is it's just the shape, you know? So if you look at it as a travel guitar and you can sort of overcome the shape, it's awesome, you know? But you can hear now, I can do a little bit of strumming. So is this guitar the first generation of headless? The answer would be yes. Of course, this was produced like 30 years later, but Steinberger, the company, I think was the first to do headless guitars. So the guy, Ned Steinberger, the creator, he kind of realized, there's some cool videos on YouTube about that, but how you know, guitars became very heavy because they had a head with a tuning mechanism here. So they had to compensate with a big body, otherwise the guitar would just do this, right? So he thought, well, what if I get rid of that? And then we're gonna get a guitar which balances naturally. And that's how he came up with the idea. So all the tuning is done down here. And this guitar is full of innovations. So considering you can buy this new for like $400 on Thomann in Europe and probably elsewhere in the world as well, I think this is a steal. But again, if you're allergic to weird looking guitars, you're not gonna like it. But I love this guitar. And I always loved not, you know, having guitars that looked like everybody else's. I mean, I would prefer a guitar with woody looks, but the shape, the weird shape, the original shape, more than compensates for, you know, the lack of wood. I mean, there's wood, but you can't see it. How do you tune it? Well, the tuners are here. These are the tuners. And these are high ratio tuners. You can do a lot with them. Unfortunately, the upper one is slightly bent and damaged, but it still works. Are string breaks easy to change quickly? Yeah, not harder. Well, let's say, well, yeah, it's definitely not harder than your average Strat or Gibson, but it's different. And if you buy the double ball bearing strings intended for this instrument, then it's super easy. Then it's probably easier than most other instruments. But I don't buy these special strings. Instead, I have what they call, I don't know what they call it, but it's an adapter. So this piece up here is just an adapter, so you can use normal strings basically, and it comes with the instrument. But if you have these double ball bearing strings, you don't need the adapter, and you can just quickly put in the string here, and it's gonna lock because it has a ball bearing up here. And then you just stick it in here. You can see, yeah, you can see the ball bearings there. And then you're done basically. So it's easy. Yeah, it's a sick guitar. I did see a review with Chapman and yeah, you know, those two famous guys keep Andertons, yeah. And they kind of hated the guitar. I think Chappers hated the guitar because of the shape, but they admitted that it's full of cool solutions and innovations, and it sounds like a guitar. It sounds cool. So again, if you like something different, if you're like me and you like having guitars of different models that are as different as possible from each other, simply because a different guitar inspires you to play differently, then you're gonna love this guitar. But if you're looking to, you know, get those Jimi Hendrix vibes, you don't want this, right? But if you're a fan of Alan Holdsworth, or maybe even Eddie Van Halen, who used this guitar quite a bit, or this style of guitar, then you might actually find that the looks also match, you know, what you're going for. House of the Rising Sun. No, there is something. I don't know it. Sorry, mate. How would you say is the easiest way to learn how to shred? That's a cool question. Easiest way to shred. So, I mean, if your only goal is to have like a few tricks under your belt and really just be able to shine with those, and you like the idea of torturing yourself with a metronome, then all you have to do is go for 2 or 3 exercises and practice them all day long, and that's going to give you the quickest results. But would I encourage you to do that? No, because I'm not a fan of developing a shred technique that's only good for shredding. I think you're doing yourself a disfavor, or whatever the word is, if you sit there and practice and you don't take everything into account, because results was always going to take some time. So if you're going to climb up that mountain, would you rather not go all the way up and realize you have lots of good food and everything you need to have a good time up there? Or do you want to kind of look down and realize you forgot half of the baggage and you need to redo that journey? So if you're like me and you'd rather be happy high up on that mountain, then you wouldn't go for just 2 or 3 exercises to become like a one-trick pony. So I'm sorry I didn't fully answer your question there, but it's repetition is key if you want to shine technically. But shining technically is actually something that needs clarification, you know? For example, just because you're super fast with your picking, if you haven't practiced bending and vibrato, your amazing picking runs are basically going to sound like shit because they don't resolve into anything, you know, which people want to hear. So you don't just want to become a one-trick pony. You also want to have control of your bent notes, of your vibrato, so that these crazy shred runs will sound good. And then you're going to realize, if you spend a lot of time building your speed, that what really matters at the end is not really how fast you can play, but how fast your playing is perceived. And what I mean by that is, if you look at players, I don't know if you would compare, I don't know, maybe Paul Gilbert and Eric Johnson. I'm a big fan of both of them, but in very different ways. And I think most people would agree that probably Paul Gilbert maybe is twice as fast as Eric Johnson. But I also think that many people would agree that if you compare some of their runs and playing, Eric Johnson actually sounds twice as fast. So how is that possible? How can you be half as fast and sound twice as fast? And that has to do with the perception of speed. So even if you're super fast, you know, it doesn't necessarily sound fast. And that has to do with your cleanliness, your control, and your choice of licks. And also, all those things are related to whether your technique is tensed up or whether it's relaxed. All these things are super important if you want your playing not only to be fast, but to sound fast and sound cool. Because the reason you want to sound fast is probably because you think or you've seen someone who sounds cool when they play fast. So I hate to be a disappointer, but usually when I get this question, how do you learn to play fast? What I like to do is really, encourage the question, but also question the question. Are you asking the right question? Do you really need to play fast or do you need to play cool? Like I said, I'm a big fan of both Paul Gilbert and Eric Johnson, but anytime I would choose to have Eric Johnson's technique, anytime. Especially, back in the days, in the 80s and 90s, I think he was untouchable in terms of how he sounded, the quality of his runs. But there are more dimensions to that. Neither Eric Johnson nor Paul Gilbert, I would say, have a technique that is really allowing them to freely improvise. So what do you do if you want to sound like Eric Johnson and you want to be able to improvise as well? Well, then maybe you start looking a bit towards Alan Holdsworth. I mean, you might not like the style of music he played. I do, but he had amazing tone, especially considering his stuff was improvised. So that's just mind-blowing. That's when you start getting into legato and you realize that, okay, with legato, you can both get a pretty good tone and you have the total freedom of improvisation. So that question, how do I learn to play fast? It's a good one because we all need to work on our techniques. But we also need to get more specific, I think, in the questions we ask ourselves. The more we progress and the better we get. So even though I work on my technique on a daily basis, I no longer ask myself the question, how can I play faster? I only ask myself the question, how can I be more free when I play and improvise? And how can my runs sound better? Never how can they sound faster? And those are the questions I ask myself, and those are the ones I try to find solutions for. And it's important because the solution to the speed problem is vastly different from the solution of the tone problem. These are two different animals. But the good thing is, if you improve your tone, along the way you will improve your technique and speed as well. But if you only work on your speed, there's a good chance your tone is actually negatively affected. So I know it's a boring answer, and to be honest with you, I started out doing everything wrong. I started out not doing or not practicing what I'm preaching now. I think that's okay because it's in the right order. These realizations, they come later on in life. More is more. Sound faster means more notes per second. No, not only. Because you can play more notes per second, but if the technique is not clean, it's not going to be perceived as more notes per second. It's just going to be perceived as a big mush of notes. So sounding faster can sometimes mean playing less notes per second, but playing them cleaner. That's kind of what I'm trying to say here. This is stuff I realized after 20 years of playing, but it's true. Like you can check out the new guys like the Matteo Mancuso, this amazing fingerstyle fusion player, is all over the web right now. I mean, he's fast and he's flexible, but his note isolation is amazing. You can play that stuff with a clean tone, with a distorted tone, and you can hear every note. You can hear how well defined it is, and that makes him amazing. That makes his runs sound super precise and fast, which they are, even though he probably doesn't play faster than Paul Gilbert, But who cares? It sounds amazing. It sounds faster than the fastest because he's in total control of his technique. That's really what it boils down to at the end. So, as I said, I started out trying to play fast, and then I realized speed wasn't really the solution to my problems. But the time I spent with those metronome exercises, I think were decently well spent because I did fix the issues later on, and I still benefited from having invested all that practice time into my technique. But if if I were to redo it now, I would probably have spent my practice sessions a little bit differently. Not entirely different, but a bit different. Arvi, awesome. You're my inspiration. Thank you for sharing your time. Man, you're too kind. Arvi, are you perhaps from Scandinavia, Norway, something? I don't know. It sounds a little bit like you might be from Norge. Snakker du norsk da? For those who don't know, I'm Swedish. Joni, did I attend a guitar music school? No, I never did. I had 1 year of private lessons with a big inspiration of mine, and that was Christian Nyman, a Swedish guitarist, amazing shredder, and he played for some. He does play for like a pretty big doom metal band now. Can't remember their name. I should have to look that up. Pretty big in Sweden here, and I think they're touring now. But he also played for Therion, who is more, I think, internationally known for that opera, German, or I think Swedish, but they're pretty big in Germany, like opera metal band. Pretty cool. Oh, from the Philippines. Okay, just your name then. So yeah, I never went to music school, and it's not my thing. I don't really like the streamlined education. I think, especially in arts and music, the whole idea is to develop originality. And some people like schools to achieve that goal. I don't. I like exploring your inner self. So I like encouraging my students to really look deep down into themselves, not look at how everybody else is doing it. You can do that for inspiration, and sometimes it's the only way to kind of fast track your way towards getting better. But as soon as possible, I like to start looking within for the solutions, not at some ready-made curriculum or something like that. Whose artist are you currently listening to? So, to be honest with you, I'm not really listening that much to guitar-based music anymore. When I do, it's with lots of nostalgia, and I would probably revisit some of my favorite instrumental albums from, like, Tony McAlpine, Maximum Security, or those classic Eric Johnson, Yngwie, Alan Holdsworth, Steve Morse. Lots of cool album there. Blues Saraceno, I like a lot, but I like just good songs these days. And to be honest with you, with the schedule I have now with family and work and everything, most of the input from new music either comes from scrolling Instagram in between my uploads, and then I'll find these new names of Instagram guitarists, or musical inspiration come from my daughters, who find all this pop music, maybe, I don't care if it's Taylor Swift or something else. If the song is good, I like it. So I like a good song, and I prefer a good song with screaming guitars and with throaty, gutsy attitude singing. But not all good songs have that. Some songs have clean and accurate singing, and I like that as well if it's a good song. But I do find that the more rock-oriented an arrangement is, the more frequently I can listen to it. And I think that goes down to just an organic arrangement with real instruments have lots of subtle details to them. It can be overtones in the sound. And I mean, let's face it, if you're going to play like 5 chord strikes on a guitar, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you might, every strike is going to be different. And every strike sounded like shit there, but that's better. And the reason is because it's totally organic, and you can't replicate the exact strumming motion twice. It's not something you can hear, but it is there without you noticing it. If you do the same with a sampled instrument, you are going to get the same sample 5 times. And that's why I think it's easier to listen to rock albums a lot than it is to pop albums. Just a theory of mine, because there are so many pop tunes that are great, but you still can't listen to it that often. I mean, like the Dance Monkey hit, that was a big hit a few years ago. I love the tracks. Like, this has to be one of the best songs in the world. And I listened to it a lot one day. But after like 7 times, I know every detail of this song now. It's like the vocals can still have that variation, but a lot of the sample stuff doesn't. Lars, how can I find a band to join? Because these days, a lot of young people don't play an instrument anymore. That's a good question. Might be a little too good for me because I don't have a plan for that either. Sorry, I'm just gonna have to move a little bit. I really want to sit inside the sun here, or sit in the sun. I'm a big fan of sun because when you're sitting inside a garage or a studio all the time and you finally get to go outside and get some sun, it's addictive, especially if you're Scandinavian. Here's a fun fact. This is a U-Rock guitar strap. This is like the cheapest strap you can find, but it does its job. You always have to keep a security grip on the guitar. So, how can I find a band to join? Oh, that's hard. I don't know where you live. Lars, are you Scandinavian based? I would say guitar stores, maybe. But the thing is, I haven't visited a guitar store for a long time because I hate guitar stores. I really don't like them. I'm sure there are some good ones elsewhere in the world, but if you grew up in the 90s in Stockholm, guitar stores were filled with wannabe musicians who knew nothing about being service-minded to customers. So it was quite a trauma just to go in and try guitars as a kid. I hated it, but I loved guitar, and back in the days you couldn't order things online, so that was your only choice. Going into those horrible guitar stores and suffer from the treatment by the salespeople in there. Oh, from the Netherlands. Well, I don't know how guitar stores are in the Netherlands, but thank you for your contributions to Ukraine, by the way. You guys really rocking it. I think we do as well, Sweden does it, but we're small countries, but you do fantastic work there with your prime minister or whatever it's called, so keep it up. Yeah, I would say go to guitar stores one way. Just maybe try the classic way, putting up like a sticker. Otherwise, of course, try to find local social media groups. And especially if you live in one of the bigger cities in the Netherlands, and you can find like just a Facebook group, guitar group, Netherlands guitar group. That could be a way to do it. Just uploading uploading videos where you play your favorite tracks, or if you write your own music, whatever. And also being clear that you look for bandmates. I think that can land you. You could succeed in doing that. Take some time with everything. I mean, even professional musicians struggle hard to find a band basically where the chemistry is right. You can always play with other paid musicians and all that, but finding the right bandmates, that can be just as hard as finding your life partner, your wife or your husband, whatever. So it's not easy, but it's work in progress basically. Are jumbo frets easier to shred with? Yeah. So these are medium frets, but the scallop basically gives me the same effect as jumbo frets. And the reason why jumbo frets are so much easier to play with is because of their height. Your fingertips don't touch the wood. That might seem like a small thing, but when you're doing bending and vibrato, it's all of a sudden a huge thing. And if you realize why it's easier to bend with those frets, then the next realization is going to be that, well, if it's easier to bend, that means I get a better grip of the string. I can actually, the more the pressure I spend here with my left hand is more well invested because I don't have to push the wood as well. That doesn't help me in my guitar playing. I really just want to use as little force as possible to fret the string, not press the wood. I think my brain is too thick to explain that, but hopefully it makes sense. So yeah, Arvi, for sure, you can shred easier with big frets. I mean, that's a classic. especially legato stuff is going to be a big difference. But just anything where you need a better grip for the string, you know, whenever you want to, that kind of thing where you, I might not even be using my right hand. Cool, Joji. So you got approached to play professionally. That's awesome. You should be happy about that. Um, I mean, it's all what you want to do. I've come to realize, you know, the older I get, that sometimes having a hobby is so much more worth than trying to turn your hobby into a profession, you know? Um, because hobbies can save you when you're down, even if you have no one else there, you have no one to help you out, have little friends or family or none, your hobby can save you. You know, there are countless musicians who I think probably wouldn't even be alive if they didn't have their instruments to play with. That sounded a bit funny. But anyhow, so guys, even if you don't think you're very good at playing guitar, that goes for girls as well watching. Just the fact that you love playing the guitar, that's what matters, you know? And it doesn't even have to be guitar playing. It could be walking in the forest or, I don't know, playing football or something. Just having a hobby that you really love doing, that's worth everything, you know? So don't underestimate having a hobby. You could be really crappy at that hobby, doesn't matter at all. If you enjoy doing this, gives you something back, then you have a tool in life that is totally invaluable, I would say. It's worth everything because you can always use that tool when you encounter really hard periods in life. It's going to help you get through them. Oh, so you bought a guitar with well, I have done that a lot as well, you know. I bought like vintage style guitars because I love the specs except for the frets, the fret wire. But changing the fret wire is difficult and expensive. So if you don't want to sell the guitar, if you don't think it has a lot of secondhand value, and you do want to keep it, then you could scallop the guitar. But you shouldn't do it unless you know what you're doing, because if you do it wrong, you'll ruin the guitar. But that's what I've done with several of my guitars that have like a vintage style fretboard. Yeah, Johnny, I don't know if you've seen my old videos, but I am a fan of Parker Fly. I have the Parker Night Fly. That was actually the guitar I used when I had my little internet breakthrough like 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, something. I used the Parker Night Fly, so a lot of people know me for that guitar. Um, I still love the playability of that guitar, but it has a weird sound. It definitely has a weird sound. Works for some cases, but it's also weird. That's just the way it is. I think maybe some Flies I've heard sound a bit better. That's the paper thin guitar. The Night Fly is a bit more like a hot Strat, but it has a weird sound. But I think they changed the all maple fretboard or body thing. I have that. I think they changed that later on to try to get a more normal sound. I don't know how they did. I mean, they ended up going bankrupt or something, so I maybe didn't go that well. But that's another brand which has all these innovations in them. I mean, the Parker Fly was just innovation from top to toe, but I don't think we were quite ready for it. Ruz from Florida. Awesome to have you here, Ruz. Been a while. Neck can't be scalloped. Yeah, exactly. My Parker Nightfly doesn't need any scalloping. It has amazing frets, stainless. What's it called? Stainless steel, I think is the word, right? And they're super tall fret wire. And I've played the guitar a lot. Has no signs of use almost, and because it's such a solid graphite neck or fretboard. Guitar pretty much never needs readjusting, and the action is awesome. You know, it's just really, really, really a high level guitar. You don't need to scallop it if the frets are that good, and also the graphite fretboard offers pretty much zero friction for vibrato and bending. Absolutely no need to scalp. And that's also the reason why I started scalping guitars, because I noticed the playability was so different. I got myself my first Strat and it had like medium fret wire, more like a vintage style. And when I compared that to my Parker Nightfly, it was like night and day in terms of playability. Strat sounded better though, but I ended up scalloping that Strat. So I have two scallop Strats. So yeah, it's funny how that goes. I don't typically play the funky stuff, but when I'm not plugged in, I tend to play more aggressive stuff with my right hand, and I think it makes sense because you want to get some more sound out of your guitar, basically. Uh, but when I'm plugged in, I tend to. This is a great guitar for shredding, you know. So I tend to, do that stuff as well. It's really cool. I've recorded, like I said in the beginning of this video, I've recorded a lot of viral content for Instagram on this guitar. I had like a period 2 years ago where I just recorded some short clips and chopped it up as reels, and I had like millions and millions of views with this guitar. So, it's and that was like bluesy stuff. It works really well. It's definitely more than just a practice guitar. I don't know if how much of the sound is actually coming through. Can you even hear me play this? It's really cool for just, you can practice in your pentatonic box. Are you thinking about chord progression? Katie, why no more, only 15? Oh, so you're referring to the amounts of users. Well, I'm perfectly happy having 15 guys here because it just makes it easier to talk to you guys. Sometimes these platforms tend to throw in a lot of traffic in these live streams, and then you get like a million people asking me to play Smoke on Water. So it's fine. But I'm very flattered you think I deserve more. Are you thinking about chord progressions when you shred or diatonic 3-note per string stuff? Interesting. Sometimes I think about chord progressions, especially if there's like a modulation. So if I'm shredding over something that moves between different keys and you can't play E minor all over the place, then I'm gonna have to think about the chords. Sometimes I do it just to emphasize strong melody notes, but I've stopped doing that a little bit because I just prefer going random. I think that there's a bigger chance of me coming up with something cool if I don't think in terms of nailing the arpeggio notes on each chord. What was the question? What I do think is if I'm in the key of E minor or something, what I will do is play a lot of diatonic arpeggios. So instead of just playing like if it's like a classic, I don't know, metal, something in E minor, instead of just playing the E minor like that, you have your 3 minor arpeggio shapes. I'll just play diatonic arpeggios. So, I could play C major triad is in the key of E minor. The key of, or C major, D major, E minor, F sharp minor flat 5, G major, and then A minor. So all of those arpeggios, these are diatonic arpeggios to E minor. And the good thing is I can use a much easier shape. I mean, this is one of the easiest shapes, I think, the C major shape, right? So if you don't know that shape from the high E string, 15, 12, 13, 12, 14, 15. That's the shape. 15, 12, next string, 13, next string, 12, next string, 14, next string, 15. So you get, and then I move that shape around. And I think you've seen me do that in many of the videos here. Oh, cool, Joji. You like my 4-note per string runs. That's awesome. Yeah, I started doing more 4-note per string. Still got to be a little bit careful with it. It's actually not something I can practice for a very long time. I always have the risk of injury, I think, when doing really fast 4-note per string. Try to be as relaxed as possible. It's just dangerous stuff. But I do it quite a bit. Without, I don't, you know, because I can't practice that much, I just try to let it come naturally, and that's probably why it's taken me 25 years to start doing them, but just opens up a lot of possibilities. And a lot of times I'll do like stretchy 3-note per string pentatonics, and then I'll add the in-between notes, you know, to get that 4-note per string feel. It's a lot of fun. I don't know how Holsworth did it, really. He's the king of that, you know, super controlled 4-note per string. Very good stuff. In general, you know, the older I get, the more I learn to love legato. And especially 4-note per string legato really opens up a lot of doors. Just in general, stretchy legato, if it weren't so damn easy to injure yourself, I'd use it all the time, because you can really play all these nice arpeggio shapes with legato and stretch, and sounds awesome. What I tend to do in order to kind of keep progressing and not injure myself is to kind of cycle what I'm practicing. So if I'm working on stretchy stuff one day, I'm not going to do it the next day. I might even just totally take a break and play some easy bluesy pentatonic stuff, or work on my funky sides, whatever, just to have that variation. Otherwise it's too easy to injure yourself. That's a cool question there, Joji. So basically, can music theory help you sound original? And the answer is, of course, a ringing yes. Yes, it can. But it can never be the answer alone. You know, I think, how can I say this? I think it's always interesting to draw a parallel between anything else you learn and get good at. I mean, if you want to be a famous writer, typically you'd want to develop some writing originality. And in order to achieve that, you would need input from life in order to have something to say. That's definitely applicable for music as well. If you've only sat in your room for your entire life and never gone outside and meet anybody else and have any interactions, you will have nothing to say in music as well. So just live a life is useful. Okej, jag ska avsluta snart. So you need input from life, but is, you know, learning the alphabet and learning different writing techniques, is that going to help you writing original books? Yeah, it's going to be a tool. So it won't help you if you never had any input from life, because you will have nothing to say. You'll just have the best technique to say it. Same for music, you know. You can be the best theory dude in the world, and you can have developed great playing style, but you haven't really had those interactions that give you the chemistry of life, you know, and really, so you need all of that. You need a diverse toolbox if you want to be able to say cool stuff, and it doesn't matter if you're playing guitar or doing anything else. Okay, so I actually have to end this session now. I'm gonna go out with my youngest daughter and my wife, and we're gonna get some ice cream. I think it will be nice. It's a really nice summer day here. But yeah, thanks so much for tuning in. It's been an amazing session. We've spoken about my guitar, my travel guitar, and we've spoken about practicing and progressing and all that good stuff. So yeah, thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you soon. You're the best. And I've been Christopher Dahl. Have a good one. See you. Cheers.